Information from the CDC tonight is turning crucial things we were told about COVID upside down. The CDC revealing tonight that 74% of COVID cases in Barnstable County, Massachusetts, home to Provincetown, where there was a recent outbreak, were found in people who were fully vaccinated. And they say now that the vaccinated are just as likely to spread the virus as those who are not vaccinated. And that, of course, is contrary to what was widely.
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfucker.
Turning crucial things we were told about COVID upside down.
Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is.
We don't know if these vaccines will work. We don't know if they'll work to avoid deaths. We don't know if they'll work to avoid transmission. That's why we're working on so many first-generation vaccines, and you'd like it to be very safe in all the populations that you indicated for, no side effects.
Where are we in terms of a rapid diagnostic test? You've talked about this a lot. It would be a test that is like an in-home pregnancy test.
In the next 2 to 4 months, some of those tests will get approved. Now, they won't be as accurate as the PCR, which is a molecular test.
Hong Kong, no more to stand with China. We need independence.
Yep. And what's your message to? Have you seen Donald Trump? Do you think he should step in?
Donald Trump don't trust China. China is asshole.
Well, I want to ask you. You mentioned side effects. The side effects for the Moderna vaccine sound concerning. We looked. After the second dose, at least 80% of participants experienced a systemic side effect, ranging from severe chills to fevers. So, are these vaccines safe?
Well, the FDA, not being pressured, will look hard at that. The FDA is the gold standard of regulators. And their current guidance on this, if they stick with that, is very, very appropriate. And you know, the side effects were not super severe. That is, it didn't cause permanent health problems for the things there. Moderna did have to go with a fairly high dose, and so to get the antibodies. Some of the other vaccines are able to go with lower doses to get responses that are pretty high, including the J&J and the Pfizer. And so there's a lot of characteristics of these vaccines. It's great that we have multiple of them that are going out there. And yes, I think
you know the data better than I do. But the data showed that everybody with a high dose had a side effect.
Yeah, but some of that is not dramatic, where it's just super painful. But yes, we need to make sure there's not severe side effects. The FDA, I think, will do a good job of that, despite the pressure.
How many doses of the vaccine will we need?
Well, none of the vaccines at this point appear like they'll work with a single dose. That was the hope at the very beginning. Maybe one of them, particularly in the second generation, won't surprise us. We hope just 2, although in the elderly, sometimes it takes more. And so making sure we have lots of elderly people in the trial will give us that data.
You've said some more than 7 billion doses. That's what we'll need.
Well, if what you're trying to do is block all the transmission, then you need to get 70-80% coverage on a global basis. So that, it's unbelievably big numbers.
I mean, you're talking about a global vaccination program without a vaccine that hasn't been fully developed yet, and a massive scaling up of how to produce one or several vaccines. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think about this effort.
But the private companies have stepped up. The science has been advanced. The U.S. funds biological research more than any other country. We've stepped up to fund these vaccine manufacturers. The plants are being worked out now. In 2021, there's a good chance this can get done. And because, this is about the billions that we need to spend to save trillions and avoid all those deaths.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
And winter is coming.
Winter is coming.
And what we want to do is avoid vaccine passports if we possibly can. And that's what that's the course we're on. But I think you've got to be prudent and you've got to keep things in reserve in case things change. Obviously, that's right.
Make no mistake, the over-governance and disproportionate measures we see today in order to respond to a virus is a case of martial law masquerading as medical law. Measures like standing 1.5 metres away from someone, for God's sake, mandatory mask wearing, limits on visitors to your home, only allowed to leave for certain reasons. This is North Korean stuff.
Good morning, ladies and gents. Thank you, Premier. Thanks, Minister. The New South Wales Police Force will launch Operation Stay at Home Sunday at midnight. As you know, there are already 300 men and women of the ADF on the ground, and an additional 500 will come online from Monday. And our part in this is to get New South Wales Health ahead of the Delta variants. The fines are some of the biggest fines that I've ever seen, and we will be issuing them. So can I say to the members of the community out there is that you may think that leaving your LGA to train is okay, but it's not. You've got a 5K limit now from your house in Greater Metro Sydney. We will be enforcing that. You do have to carry identification. There's a whole range of other health orders that we can use against you. I closed the first business this morning, a cafeteria at Leichhardt, for 14 days for continual breaches of the health order, and I won't apologise that more businesses will be closed over the next 21 days. The permit system is essential in terms of protecting regional New South Wales, and I would ask from Monday there will be information online on the government website in terms of how to access a permit, and the permit system will come in place midnight Friday next week. I think it's important that those people who have been getting around the orders, taking family vacations to other premises, that is over. You would have seen roadblocks both south and north over the last couple of days, and across Greater Sydney and into regional New South Wales. Expect to see more roadblocks where we'll be checking with compliance.
Firstly, in relation to police operations, there will be a visible and increased police presence in the affected local government areas, including deployment of specialised commands and including a riot squad, highway patrol and increased presence more broadly. There'll be enhanced random checkpoints at key roads with accompanying electronic warning signs so that police have every ability with that increased presence to clamp down on people doing the wrong thing. From Monday, the health orders will be formally enforced from midnight. However, between now and then, police will still be able to impose these additional fines. Between now and then, if police have evidence that you're doing the wrong thing in any of these categories, these additional fines will apply. So $5,000 for on-the-spot breach of home quarantine, which is currently $1,000. $5,000 on the spot for lying on a permit, which is already a criminal offence. $5,000 on the spot fine for lying to a contact tracer, which is already a criminal offence. $3,000 on the spot fine for breaching the two-person exercise rule in any way. $3,000 on the spot fine for breaching rules going into regional New South Wales. In Greater Sydney and other lockdown areas, but not the local government areas of concern, the 10-kilometre rule will come down to 5 kilometres. So you can obviously do activity within your local government area, but instead of 10 kilometres from your home, it will be 5 kilometres from your home, and that's for all of Greater Sydney. All those areas which aren't the local government areas of concern will now have imposed on them the 5 kilometres instead of the 10 kilometres. In affected local government areas, we want to stress that exercise means only exercise and supervision of children. Exercise means exercise. Many people know that, but unfortunately, some people were trying to get around the rules that were imposed. In affected local government areas, you will need to register your single buddy to make sure that people aren't abusing that rule. And also, importantly, for regional New South Wales, you will need a permit to go into regional New South Wales. Whether you're an authorised worker, whether you're travelling to a second home because you might be a worker utilising a second home, or whether you're inspecting real estate, you will need a permit. The permit system will be effective from next Saturday, but obviously between now and then, police can stop you and seek evidence for what you're doing. And if you're doing the wrong thing, you'll have those extra fines imposed.
So back in the day, there was this thing called the British Empire, and it controlled half the world. Some of the empire's colonies were full of white immigrants from Britain, and after a while, the people in the white colonies wanted to have their own government and run their own affairs. But Britain said no. And then America staged a revolution and left the empire, and Britain said, let's talk. After many years of negotiation, in 1931, Britain's 6 white colonies, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Newfoundland, and Ireland, came up with an arrangement to become completely politically independent while still retaining one important link to Great Britain. The idea was that even after these countries became independent, the British monarch would still be at the top of their political pyramid.
Winter is coming. Half the city will starve when winter comes, the other half will plot to overthrow you.
Before we let you go, there's a lot of Arkansans talking about this. I'm sure you've seen the Intercept report. A lot of Arkansans talking about it. They're alleging that through a Freedom of Information Act request that they say they've uncovered documents showing the United States knowingly funded research into the coronavirus in Wuhan. What is your reaction to that report, sir?
Well, the fact is that the research that was done was to be able to get information to help protect us from future pandemics, because it was done at a time following SARS-CoV-1, which you remember was a pandemic in 2002. The research was well regulated and had absolutely nothing to do with SARS-CoV-2. So if you're trying to conflate the conduct of research that underwent peer review in the appropriate way, people are inappropriately trying to connect one with the other. And anyone who knows anything about virology will tell you that the experiments that were done with viruses that could never possibly evolve into SARS-CoV-2.
We don't know whether the pandemic started in a lab in Wuhan or evolved naturally, but we should want to know. 3 million people have died from this pandemic, and that should cause us to explore all possibilities. Instead, government authorities, self-interested in continuing gain-of-function research, say there's nothing to see here. Gain-of-function research, as you know, is juicing up naturally occurring animal viruses to infect humans. To arrive at the truth, the U.S. government should admit that the Wuhan Virology Institute was experimenting to enhance the coronavirus's ability to infect humans. For years, Dr. Ralph Baric, a virologist in the U.S., has been collaborating with Dr. Shi Zhengli of the Wuhan Virology Institute, sharing his discoveries about how to create superviruses. This gain-of-function research has been funded by the NIH. The collaboration between the U.S. and the Wuhan Virology Institute continues. Doctors Baric and Shi worked together to insert bat virus spike protein into the backbone of the deadly SARS virus, and then use this man-made supervirus to infect human airway cells. Think about that for a moment. The SARS virus had a 15% mortality. We're fighting a pandemic that has about a 1% mortality. Can you imagine if a SARS virus that's been juiced up and had viral proteins added to it, to the spike protein, if that were released accidentally? Dr. Fauci, do you still support funding of the NIH funding of the lab in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, with all due respect, you are entirely and completely incorrect that the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Do they fund Dr. Baric?
We do not fund.
Do you fund Dr. Barrick's gain-of-function research?
Dr. Barrett does not doing gain-of-function research, and if it is, it's according to the guidelines, and it is being conducted in North Carolina, not
You don't think inserting
China.
a bat virus spike protein that he got from the Wuhan Institute into the SARS virus is gain-of-function?
That is
You would
not-
be in the minority because at least 200 scientists have signed a statement from the Cambridge Working Group saying that it is gain-of-function.
Well, it is not. And if you look at the grant and you look at the progress reports, it is not gain of function, despite the fact that people tweet that.
So
they
do
write
you still
about it.
support sending money to the Wuhan Virology Institute?
We do not send money now to the Wuhan
Do you
Virology
support
Institute.
sending money? We did under your tutelage. We were sending it through EcoHealth. It was a sub-agency and a sub-grant. Do you support that the money from NIH that was going to the Wuhan Institute?
Let me explain to you why that was done. The SARS-CoV-1 originated in bats in China. It would have been irresponsible of us if we did not investigate the bat viruses and the serology to see who might have been infected.
Or perhaps it would be
in China.
irresponsible to send it to the Chinese government that we may not be able to trust with this knowledge and with this incredibly dangerous viruses. Government scientists like yourself who favor gain-of-function research.
I don't favor gain-of-function research in China. You are saying things that are not correct.
Government defenders of gain-of-function, such as yourself, say that COVID-19 mutations were random and not designed by man. But interestingly, the technique that Dr. Barrick developed forces mutations by serial passage through cell culture that the mutations appear to be natural. In fact, Dr. Barrick named the technique the no-see-em technique because the mutations appear naturally. Nicholas Baker in the New York Magazine said nobody would know if the virus had been fabricated in a laboratory or grown in nature. Government authorities in the U.S., including yourself, unequivocally deny that COVID-19 could have escaped a lab. But even Dr. Shi in Wuhan wasn't so sure. According to Nicholas Baker, Dr. Shi wondered, could this new virus have come from her own laboratory? She checked her records frantically and found no matches. That really took a load off my mind, she said. I had not slept for days. The director of the gain-of-function research in Wuhan couldn't sleep because she was terrified that it might be in her lab. Dr. Barrick, an advocate of gain-of-function research, admits the main problem that the Institute of Virology has is the outbreak occurred in close proximity. What are the odds? Barrick responded, could you rule out a laboratory escape? The answer in this case is probably not. Will you, in front of this group, categorically say that the COVID-19 could not have occurred through serial passage in a laboratory?
I do not have any accounting of what the Chinese may have done, and I'm fully in favor of any further investigation of what went on in China. However, I will repeat again, the NIH and NIAID categorically has not funded gain-of-function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
You do support it in the U.S. We have 11 labs doing it, and you have allowed it here. We have a committee to do it, but the committee has granted every exemption. You're fooling with Mother Nature here. You're allowing super viruses to be created with a 15% mortality. It's very dangerous. I think it was a huge mistake to share this with China, and it's a huge mistake to allow this to continue in the United States. And we should be very careful to investigate where this virus came from.
I fully agree that you should investigate where the virus came from. But again, we have not funded gain-of-function research on this virus in the Wuhan Institute of Virology, no matter how many times
you're parsing
you say
words.
it.
There
it
was
didn't happen.
research. There was research done with Dr. Shi and Dr. Barrick. They have collaborated on gain-of-function research where they enhanced the SARS virus to infect human airway cells, and they did it by merging a new spike protein on it. That is gain-of-function. That was joint research between the Wuhan Institute and Dr. Barrick. You can't deny it.
Senator Paul, your time has expired. Dr. Fauci, I will let you respond to that when we need to move on.
Excuse me?
I will allow you to respond to that, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say, I don't know how many times I can say it, Madam Chair. We did not fund gain-of-function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
Thank you.
First, on COVID origins, you've said from that podium that under no circumstance would President Biden ever fire Dr. Fauci. Is that still the case, since Fauci told Congress the NIH never funded gain-of-function research for coronaviruses in Wuhan, but documents published by The Intercept suggest that is not true, which would mean that he misled Congress?
Well, first, I would
say that NIH has refuted that reporting, and I would point you to that. But let me give you some highlights of that. NIH has never approved any research that would make a coronavirus more dangerous to humans. I'm reminded that there are previous and different coronaviruses than the existing one we're battling. And the body of science produced by this research demonstrates that the bat coronavirus sequences published from that work NIH supported were not COVID, the strain, COVID-2 strain. So what he said was correct.
So his job is safe.
Correct.
We control the disease by controlling the information.
You can't protect the public by lying to them.
It's done every day.
Countries across the world are reporting a surge in COVID-19 infections. Britain, Australia, Japan, the Philippines, the United States. The reason is the highly contagious Delta variant. A new report by the United States Center for Disease Control says the report finds that the variant is as contagious as the chickenpox and definitely far more serious than the common cold or flu. The CDC report also says that the Delta variant is so dangerous that it can even be passed on by vaccinated people. The CDC released data from a study of an outbreak in Massachusetts in which 3/4 of those infected had been fully vaccinated. This has prompted the CDC to propose mandatory vaccines for the health workers and returning to universal wearing of face masks. The CDC also said that the US government had to acknowledge that the war has changed and ensure that people understood that those unvaccinated were 10 times more likely to become seriously ill or even die. President Biden also admitted that in all probability, new guidelines and restrictions were on the horizon to curb the resurgence of COVID-19 infections. He did not specify what steps would be taken. This comes a day after the president pushed for those unvaccinated to get the jab, going so far as asking the local governments to provide cash rewards in order to tempt people to get the shot.
In all probability, by the way, we had a good day yesterday. Almost 1 million people got vaccinated. About 500,000 of those people for the first time, for the second shot. And so I'm hopeful that people are beginning to realize how essential it is to move.
Nearly a third of American adults have yet to get a first shot against COVID-19. Areas where vaccination rates are low have seen sharp rises in cases in recent weeks, and authorities fear that hospitalizations and deaths are not far behind.